stuff. You are in that closing phase for your business. So why don't you tell me what made that opportunity perfect for you?
Let's see. It was a little bit of the opportunity that was there at the time when I was looking. I think it's easy to get too picky when you're looking at businesses, and if you come at it with an abundance mindset that hey, there's a lot of businesses that can work if you're willing to be the X factor that makes it work, then the world feels a lot more open to possibilities. So yeah, that's what kind of brought me to excavation, which is when you start out looking for a service-based business and you end up in an excavation, then you're all of a sudden taking on all the things that people say are red flags, right? Like it's not reoccurring revenue, it's project-based, it's cyclical. There is there's some red flags that come up with that. It's not the cash flow cycles could be long. So but just got to make it work.
Exactly. And I mean, speaking of making it work and some of the quicker decisions you took, I mean, you found out about us through Facebook in, I believe it was May 2024, right?
That sounds right. Yeah, I think that sounds correct.
Yeah.
I'm trying to
And you
remember the date.
joined, yeah, and you joined June, I think it was 17th. So it was pretty quick between finding out about us and joining us. So I mean, just out of curiosity, what was it about us that made you want to go into this?
So I found out from you guys on Facebook. I think it was actually in 23 is when I heard about you guys originally. It was 2023. It would have been early 2023, and at the time I was like, I don't have the cash to actually go out and buy a business, and so I was um, determined to look like, how do I save a couple $100,000, like look at my 401k. And then as I got into that, I learned a lot about 0% finance or business funding. And I was like, you know what, I bet I could bootstrap this, and I might not have all the cash in the bank when I go for it, but I'll figure it out. I mean, ultimately buying a business is about making a deal, right? It's about having finding a seller and a bank and figuring it out. And so that's what I ended up doing. I ended up taking on the Acquira program before knowing how I would ever pay for a business all the way. And then, so I think I started that in June of 23, but it would have been right around there, right? And then from the program, I was able to start looking for deals. That's what it comes down to. And I looked at only a couple of them really seriously. I looked at a plumbing business that was ultimately too small and just too high risk for me because of how small it was, right? There was 5 employees, and it just wasn't, you lose one employee, you lose 20% of your workforce, and that was not ideal for me. And then as I was looking at that opportunity, I saw Ryerson Brothers Excavating come up on Biz Buy Sell, and immediately looked into it. It was bigger. It was a little bit easier from a licensing point of view to get into, and that was a lot more attractive for sure. So that's what led me here.
Yeah, great. And this is just out of curiosity, but did you end up going with a stock or an asset sale for the business? Which did you decide to move forward with?
Yeah. So we talked about how I didn't have a ton of cash up front, right? And had to work a deal. So I originally was planning on doing an asset sale, and I did a very traditional LOI, right? 10, and 80, 10% cash, 10% seller financing, and 80% SBA. And then I actually was looking at, so Ryerson Brothers Excavating obviously started by two brothers, one of whom was ready, they're 50-50 partners, one of whom was ready to move on to his next things. And his brother though was like, hey, I can stay on for a year. I'm an excavator at heart. Like, I want to keep excavating whether I'm here or somewhere else. And I thought, oh, I think it's worth actually going for, like, if I can bring him in at 1% or 2%, right, then I can have that buy-in long term, because I don't come from excavating, I come from sales. So I needed someone, I wanted to bring him along for the ride. And based on kind of my history working as a manager, I knew if I could actually get to know him, I could like keep him on. I could find whatever it is that motivates him to come to work every day and make sure that continued to align with Ryerson Brothers. So so I kind of changed the LOI shortly after I sent it. Said, hey, I'd really love John staying at 1%, and they said great. And then it was only after talking to a few different bankers, I was speaking to the SBA lender. And they said, well, why 1%? Why not 10? And I said, why 10, right? And they said, well, under SBA rules at the time, and this is, I believe, since changed at the end of 2025. If you do a stock sale and you're purchasing, you're keeping one of the previous owners in at 10%, and they're already an owner, they now qualify for that qualifies as your equity injection. So we totally rewrote the business, the purchasing strategy. Said we're going to do a stock sale. John's going to own 10%. I'm going to own 90%. I'm going to take on the SBA loan. Then for 90%, we're going to get rid of seller financing, other than the 10% that John's going to maintain as an equity stake. And from there, we went through the SBA process, and I was able to close without an equity injection, which is pretty rare when you're from the SBA point of view. And I don't think it's and actually since 2025, the rules have now changed so that you can still do that same type of structure. But if you have no matter how small the equity stake is of your minority partner, they still have to take on a personal guarantee for the loan. Which I actually asked John. I said, would you still have done this deal if I had said you have to have a personal guarantee for the loan for 2 years, which is what the SBA rules are? And he said, no, absolutely not. I mean, he didn't know me, right? But at the time, those were the rules, and I was able to take advantage of them through the help of a really good banking partner, Old National. So shout out to them. Jeff Kleinschmidt over there is excellent and always up to date on the SBA rules, and he's what helped to make the whole structure come together.
Great. No, I mean, you took a couple of questions there for me. I was going to ask you about the transition from your old career into excavation, but yeah, that makes total sense. And I'm glad you took advantage of that. I mean, while you could, because like you said, it's changed. So it might be a little bit harder to get something like that done nowadays. And just another question. I mean, regarding Acquira's process and our whole involvement in this thing, what did you find were kind of critical towards making this acquisition happen from Acquira support?
I mean, Acquire was critical throughout the whole process. I mean, when it comes down to it, right? The process of buying a business, all that information exists online. Anyone can find it, right? But it's going to take you a year to find it, and it's going to take you a year to learn it, and it's not going to get you where you want to go at the speed you want to go, right? It's a very easy investment to pay for Acquira and then learn every piece of Acquira in a really compressed timeline, and have the people that are there to support you, there to answer your questions, there to review the deals to make sure that you're on the right path, right? That's kind of the invaluable part of Acquira. So by going through the Acquira program, I was able to learn the process very quickly. And the seller's broker will tell you this. He's like, you're the most qualified buyer I've ever worked with. In his history of working with buyers and sellers in the small medium business space, right? And I was like, well, I can't really take that much credit. I just went through the program and learned what I could learn, and that's why I was able to show up to meeting with sellers and having appropriate due diligence, asking the right question, having the right expectations around what's possible with the deal, what's possible with the SBA, what do timelines look like. What does the transition look like? What's reasonable to ask of a seller? And that makes such a huge difference in those transactions, right? Because if you're not prepared as a buyer walking into a transaction like that, you are going to get run over by the competition. And I know since I closed in May of last year, right? It's been a little over a year at this point. Since I closed, the market has only gotten tougher. There's more buyers out there, right? You can't show up unprepared. You have to have the knowledge. You have to have people who've done it before. You have to have that network working with you in order to get it done. That's the only way it's going to happen.
Right. So definitely a recommendation for the sellers, eh? Wanting to work with Acquira trained buyers.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Sorry, a little bit of my Canadian accent came out in that question.
That's all good. It's all good. Hey, listen, I'm in Michigan. We're not that far from Canada.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And to go back to, I guess, the financing part of this deal, because that's really what made this very special. I mean, for someone with a similar starting point between about 50 to 100K in capital, I mean, what sort of advice would you give?
Yeah, so I would, if you're looking at 50 to 100K in capital, but you want to buy a little bit on the bigger side, I would look very carefully about who you are working with from a financial partner point of view, right? There's a lot of SBA lenders out of there, and I think there's a tendency from a buyer's point of view to say, okay, I'm going to shop a deal around. I'm going to make some relation, meet some lenders. Um, and what you really want to do is really carefully um, work with lenders to understand what kind of deals are they interested in, what kind of deals is their bank interested in, what kind of things do they finance, right? When I had having the lender I worked with, Old National, come to me and having someone who's up to date on the SBA rules and say, hey, this is possible, right? A whole deal structure I wasn't even necessarily looking at, was huge. And in some ways, I think, man, I should have been more prepared. I should have been the one saying, is this possible? But when I took that same deal structure that I ended up closing with Old National, and I brought the same deal structure to other lenders, they gave me a big, yeah, right. That's never going to happen, right? You're not going to get away with buying a multi-million-dollar business with zero cash equity injection, especially when you don't have any experience in that business. That was a very quick response. So you have to find the right financial partners. You have to uh, learn from them, right? At the end of the day, you can only absorb so much information. The real experts on deal structures are going to come from those on the financial end of things. But also, there's been a lot of create. You have to get creative too. I think it's easy to get stuck into traditional structures of purchasing a business, right? So if I were at a spot where I had 50 to 100K in capital, I'm going to walk into a business day one, I would look to purchase a business that's 2 million plus, right? And I'm not going to be able to show up with that 10% that most lenders look for. I would say, okay, what kind of seller maybe wants to work with me on a bigger seller note that we can maybe find a way to make it count as an equity injection from an SBA point of view. Like what are the structures around that? Like with the current SBA rules, my head immediately goes to, is there some kind of earnout that I can use to kind of leverage this further with a seller so that I can get cash from a seller and then use that as my own equity injection, right? Um, the other piece to that though is really understanding the motivations of your sellers, right? Every deal is going to look a little bit different. And when you're working with sellers, you need to understand what's motivating them, right? Ultimately, what are they looking to do? I've looked at deals since purchasing Ryerson Brothers with a few other colleagues who look to purchase businesses, and sometimes you're going to have a mismatch in priorities between a seller and a buyer, and there's really no way around it. It just means the deal's not right for you, right? Because sometimes you walk into a family business and you expect, hey, their priority is to keep this family business, running forever under a great new owner. And for a lot of sellers, that's true. But sometimes they're just looking for the biggest dollar amount with the quickest close terms. And when you run into that, if you're the one coming to the table with less than 10% of a purchase price, then you're going to have a really tough uphill battle because then you've got a lot of times competing with private equity, right? And that's what I ran into with another deal I was working with a colleague of mine, and he ran into that, and eventually, the end result was he could not match the dollar amounts that they were looking for, and 6 months later, that business is now that I should say it became a private equity purchase that became a location that now the location is now closed. So that's unfortunately kind of the other direction. But for the seller, they got the top dollar and they got a quick close. So ultimately their priorities were not the same as as my colleague and myself as buyers. So you do definitely run into that. So you have to have the alignment.
Yeah, yeah, and the seller alignment is definitely super important. And one thing I do think a lot of people forget, which you mentioned earlier too, is leaning on your lenders. I mean, lenders want to help you get the deal done, so they're going to be there to offer you more creative ways to buy that business and do all that. So yeah, people do. It's always more important to reach out to these lenders and figure out what's possible instead of trying to find something that sticks with the practical or normal. So yeah, that's great to hear. And I guess now some questions. Just I've only have a couple more here, but
Sure.
regarding your goals, I mean, how does this business tie into your goals? Was acquisition your ultimate goal, or does your ultimate goal come in through ownership?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It's something I actually spend a lot of time thinking about. So a lot of times when you're looking to buy a business, you're just trying to get out of the rat race a little bit, right? If you're coming from a place where you're someone's employee and you're looking for that freedom of time, ultimately buying a business is can be really attractive, right? Be your own boss. There's a lot of financial potential at the end of that, right? And so for a long time, as I went through the process of buying a business, that was all I really thought about. And then you buy a business and you walk in day one and you say, okay, I had these financial projections. I'm going to, grow us 10% year over year. And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, now I got to figure out how to do that. Right. And, you have, there's got to be joy in the process. And there has to be joy in learning a new process because once you're an owner, acquire can get you into the owner's seat, right? But the next big piece is up to you to continue your education, and you have to continue to find resources and the right people to do that. For me, that looks like, I mean, I'm currently in another program right now called CEO Finance Academy because I bought into a business with very complicated cash flows and complicated financial end of things that I was not realistically prepared for. And now, I understood how to read a P&L and a balance sheet, but I did not understand a lot of different things when it came to working with government as a government contractor, et cetera, et cetera. So I am continuing the education side of things myself. But then also, I think the big piece to that too is my own personal goals have grown in the sense of now that I have, uh, you know, a team under me that can successfully run the business on a day-to-day basis with very little of me coming in getting in the way, so to speak. I look at my own time management. I have three kids. I have an 8-year-old, 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old at this point, and I am passionate about spending time with them. Kids grow up quickly, so for me, I've reassigned a lot of my goals to how can I continue to grow this business? How can I continue to take care of my customers and employees while also being home at 4:30 when my kids get home from school? And that's a really big important thing for me. So I have on a weekly basis, I have 30 minutes set aside where it's called priorities, right? And all I do is I look at what's important in my life and I continuing to show that importance through how I spend my time, because ultimately the only real currency in this world is time, right? So what are my priorities, and am I actually putting my time towards those priorities? And I do that every week, and I kind of reassess and I look at my calendar for the upcoming week, and is my calendar aligning with those goals? Is something I think about on a continual basis.
Great. Yeah, and that's also the beauty of being a business owner. You have so much control over your own calendar. You can rewrite your job description whenever you want, that your goals can be whatever is actually important to you. You're not really restricted by anything other than time, like you said. So
Exactly.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And just one last one here. I mean, if we go back to day one, Lee, looking at that Facebook ad, what would you tell yourself?
You know, um, there I feel like there's two kinds of confidence, right? There's the confidence from actually doing something that, like, now that I'm a business owner and I've gone through that process, now I'm a lot more confident that I can easily go through and, purchase another business, right? But I didn't have that confidence when I first saw that. I did come to it with confidence, right? You don't sign up for a program like Acquira without having some confidence in yourself. But that confidence was more out of necessity. So I guess what I would, if I were to go back and tell myself, it's that, and I tell myself that if you can do what's necessary, right? And that, for me, that's what it felt like, right? It was the change I was looking for in my life at that point. And so now I get to be on the other end of that, right? I'm a year and a half into roughly business ownership at this point. And I can say, now I can have the confidence of, yes, not only can you do it, you did do it, which means you can continue to do what the next challenge is, right? Because now, as a business owner, the challenges don't end, right? There's I look the next 3 years, and our targets of, growing our revenue by 10x. Those are really ambitious goals. And I'm looking at that from a place of, okay, this is something I need to do. And the reason I think I need to do it is because, when you own a business, ultimately everyone in that business, you are responsible for, right? And when I came in day one, and I still believe it to this day, I said my job is to provide opportunities for everyone who works for me to continue to grow in their own career, and to be able to have their own personal growth. And so if that's the mindset I'm coming to, I can't stay a small company, because my employees will just outgrow me. If I want to keep my employees and I want to continue to grow them as employees, then I need to make this a lot bigger company. So this company needs to multiply 10x in terms of its revenue in the next 3 to 5 years, in order to provide the opportunities I promised my employees and that I owe to my employees. And so now I'm looking at that challenges. That's something I've never done before, and it's like a necessity type of confidence. I can do it because I know I have to do it, and I really look forward to getting to the point, again, 3 to 5 years from now, where I can look back and say, now I'm confident that I can grow a company 10x because I did it, right? So
Exactly. Yeah. And that's real leadership there. Yeah. And
I
hey,
hope so.
thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. But I mean, congratulations, year and a half in. Must feel great. But yeah. If anything else does come up, I mean, always feel free to reach out to us. It's really interesting acquisition that you got into there. And it's really nice to speak to you. It's a great story to hear, and a great story to tell for yourself too.
Yeah, absolutely, Dante. And if I can, over the last year and a half, I've really gotten kind of somewhat disconnected from Acquira. It's hard when you're a new business owner to necessarily
Yeah.
stay connected to those people who are in a different phase. But like I said, I'm an advocate for Acquira. I wouldn't be where I am today without Acquira. And so if I can ever be of assistance to you or the community, please let me know.
Thanks so much, Lee.
All right,
Thank you,
thank you,
Lee.
Dante.
Great speaking to you. Have a nice rest of your week.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.